So pretty sure that this one's only popular when I'm not here.
We're live. Welcome to the YouTube audience, and let's get going.
Thanks, Richie. How many people do we have here? Not very many. I didn't put it on here, but what's going to be a better time for this? We want to try to do the same day and then move it later.
You're right. I actually said I would move it later, and then I tried to find a new spot, and that
It's really hard.
Down in last year, and then I never did it. Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's like super early for the Pacific region.
It's pretty early for me.
Yeah.
7 a.m. isn't normally when I start my day. It's 4 a.m. in California.
Okay, that's a fair point. Ed, do you want to take something on Twitter and just ask for a good time, and then, or we just do?
I mean, we can maybe move it to Fridays. I know my calendar is generally more open.
Don't do Friday. That's historically it's a bad choice of day. But just looking at our calendar, we would have Thursday afternoon free, like 1700 UTC, which is a similar time for all the other calls.
Yeah.
And it does not clash with the Cortex bug scrub. So let's say 1700 UTC going forward, which is, just let me check what that's in Pacific. Okay.
Hey. All right.
700 UTC.
I'll let you do that math, Richie.
That's 9 o'clock in the morning for Pacific, for California and such. So that is probably a lot better. So I will change that in the doc and everything, and then we can make some noise about it.
Hey guys, just to let you know, Ivana and I jumped into another room that was linked in the calendar, and there were a bunch of people who were trying to access that one as well.
Okay, that's good. I don't know how to get to that one. Can you join that one and give them the link here?
Is it?
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
We did, yeah.
Huh. That's not changed. Or maybe that goes wrong every week. I don't know. All right. So we're gonna change the time and fix the links.
Yeah.
But where did you find that link? Because I just checked both my own entry and the official one on the community calendar. They're all pointing to the call we're currently on.
So what I did some time ago is I copied the event to my calendar, and then I clicked on the event in that calendar. So if this updated, mine didn't.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, yeah, that we had to change this for permission reasons. First, there was some weird thing with recordings and not being able to access them because it was running on the Cyril's account for whatever reason. Okay, so that would explain it. So we should make that part of the noise making, but we have the perfect time because we're changing the time anyway. So let's stop the generator a bit and let's. You made sure that the other call is empty, correct? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Maybe give me the other link, because then I can sit in the other call and direct people if they join the old one. And now I'm going to shut up. If you can just, perfect, thank you. So I'm going to drop for a bit.
Thanks, Richie. I started adding people to the attendees. Feel free to remove yourself if you don't want to be there. For everybody that joined late, we do record these calls. And if you don't want to be recorded, you can drop and watch the recording, or hide your camera, or join under a pseudonym, or I think that's usually the intro that Richie gives. All right, I have a rough agenda, but I encourage anyone to add stuff that they want to talk about and sort of sort the ordering around a little bit. We have some stuff that is more interesting looking, I guess, but mostly what I put on here was to talk about some design docs that are up. And see if anybody has any questions or discussions. All of them should be available for comment at least, so that anybody can add feedback, opinions, etc. until that gets out of hand, or we don't want any more opinions maybe, but usually that's not the case. So the first one, I'll let Owen talk about this because I know you've done all the work on this doc, Owen, but we've mentioned this before, removing the constraint on ordering. So maybe a little bit of a background on why it's there and what we'd like to do to remove that.
Yeah, so this is a design doc for how we can remove the ordering constraint, as Ed just said. Basically, Loki requires that when you ingest log data, it comes in increasing timestamp order. This is something that we've inherited from our parent project Cortex, which makes a lot of sense for them and puts us in a funny position, or a frustrating one sometimes. In Loki, particularly when you want to ingest logs that may not be predictable in terms of timestamp. A lot of times this will come from people ingesting logs via AWS Lambdas or that sort of thing, where they don't want to create a unique per invocation label, because that runs afoul of some of our best practices. And so the idea here is to allow ingestion of samples of lines that are not strictly in order. And conveniently, most of our system already functions by kind of reading data out of your object storage that may be overlapping and that sort of thing. So we really only had to solve it in our ingester components. There's a doc out there now. Please give it a look, give some feedback. And the only kind of issue here is that due to some internal prioritizations, we probably won't start working on this for a few months.
Yes, so good news, bad news.
It's probably one of our most requested features, though, historically, at least over the past year and a half. It should enable people using Fluent D, Fluent Bit, that sort of thing. Clients that don't take into account our ordering constraint, basically. Under load, those systems can kind of batch requests to Loki independently of other batches, and then you can kind of end up in a frustrating situation here, where Loki won't actually accept some of your logs. All right, now you may continue.
Oh, thanks, Owen. I'll just mention, though, that the number one sort of priority for Loki, what we will be working on this quarter, is in the next section there, custom retention per stream and the abilities to delete logs. These basically go hand in hand because offering longer retentions usually means compliance requirements on the ability to remove things. So those will most likely be developed in parallel. And that's going to be probably our big Q1 goal. Internally, Loki's team is not all that big. We did just recently add Kavi a couple months ago. And Danny, who's on the call, is now internally at Grafana on the Loki squad. And that brings us to something like 5 or 6. So, but as Owen mentioned, he's getting loaned out to another team. And so we'll probably wait for him to come back and do the out of ordering. But good news, though, and we're still hiring a bunch, so we should be able to increase our bandwidth a little bit. And I'll hand this over to you, Danny, because these next two were both submitted by you in terms of extending the language for both JSON and adding a distinct filter.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah. So this first one, there's a PR up for it. So this is going to enable expressions in the JSON pipeline. So instead of taking a log line that's in JSON and extracting all the labels, you'll now be able to extract particular labels that you want based on an expression, and you'll be able to access elements inside of an array. And I will share my screen just to show you what the syntax would look like. I haven't got a demo at the moment. So you'll be able to do something like this. So with this being the log line, and there's an element in here called, or a field called response, and then inside of that, there's a field called status, which will be 200. You can now do something like this with a similar syntax to our label formats. So you'll have the target label name equals, and then the expression. And if you're interested in all the different use cases, there's a bunch of tests in here that show all the different scenarios that this works in. But basically, you can use this to access arrays, fields with UTF-8 names, etc. So that's that one. Does anybody have any questions on that before I move on?
Yeah. When would you use this? Sorry, I'm trying to give you some softball questions.
I just coughed there for a second. Did you say when would I use this?
Yeah. Like, what's one of the typical use cases you'd have here?
Sure.
For this feature.
Yeah. So thanks. So when you need to access elements inside of an array in JSON, that's currently not possible using the JSON pipeline. So this will enable that. And also, if you've got fields that are irregularly named, and you don't want those to all be converted to underscores. So this tries to introduce a JMS Path like syntax, but we haven't implemented all of JMS Path just because it's probably too complicated for what most users need. And this also means that when you reduce a big JSON document like this, you won't get a whole bunch of extra labels that get added at runtime. You would just get that one that you care about.
Cool. And that last part actually helps work around some recent limits that we added into Loki, which are configurable per tenant, but will throw issues if you try to return too many series. So this is one way to kind of work around that to reduce the label set that you're actively working with.
Yeah, I will extend just a little on the thought process for not just including JMS Path or JQ syntax completely. And primarily that's because I'm concerned with two problems. One is sort of embedding a language within a language. The capabilities of JMS Path include, addition, subtraction, multiple path or part testing. There's a lot you can do, and we're not sure yet if that's the way we would solve that problem. And the bigger concern there is that it's going to be hard to make that fast. What we're towing into is basically what we know we can do and not affect performance and solve a problem that we know we have. And then we'll kind of keep revisiting this as time goes on to see what other sort of syntax we might want to include inside the parser language. Maybe a good time to reference that Cyril's done a lot of work in the JSON extraction lately. So it's gotten a lot smarter now in terms of only extracting elements that are included in a sum by operation. So it will a lot more performant in that regard. So in general, JSON performance is improving a lot, and we want to add the missing functionality without kind of setting ourselves back there.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. That's a great point. And yeah, I really tried with this to keep the performance at the same level. There's some benchmarks in the PR if you're interested to have a look, but it's roughly on par. It's kind of interesting that just extracting one label is slower than extracting all of them, but there's a few interesting implementation details there. But yeah, that's it. Cool. And then moving on to the next one. So let me share this tab. So the use case for this is slightly changed. So this is going to be renamed a little bit. But effectively what this PR is going to introduce is a way to reduce a bunch of log streams down based on particular, by filtering down on particular labels. So if you have a bunch of log lines that are all pretty much the same, except for one or two fields inside of it, and those are labels, then what you can do is you can deduplicate, although we're changing that terminology now to distinct, and that will reduce the label set down. So it's probably best demonstrated with the documentation that I wrote here. So if you have a bunch of log lines like this, where imagine there was some content that was the same for each of these, but the only thing that differed was these organization IDs. And actually what you wanted is just one line for each of these organizational IDs. So you would then take that stream, run it through log format, so you get access to this org ID as a label, and then run distinct on that org ID. It's called dedupe now, but we're going to rename it. And then you end up with something like this. And so this really helped us where we have our deployment logs going into Loki, obviously, here at Grafana. And generally, we deploy some changes to a whole bunch of clusters at the same time. So the log lines will be identical except for, say, the cluster name. And so if we want to identify one change set, then we will get a distinct list of those change sets by effectively filtering out that cluster ID. And then you get a unique, a distinct list. So I hope that explanation made sense. And you can also invert that as well. So there's some more discussion about it in the design docs, some more use cases. So feel free to go and read those. Are those design docs available to the public yet?
Yeah, I changed the link to should be.
Okay, cool.
Let me know if anybody has, like, add a comment in here or Slack or in the chat for Meet. They should be edited or commentable by anyone that has the link. Yeah, there are a couple discussions in there, I think, that we added at the bottom when we were talking about this. One of the things that's not, I don't know, clear what the best path is. Sounds useful to return a count of how many lines were removed as a result of being non-distinct. But we have a couple options for how we could do that. With existing within the query language, when you have an error, we've added a new label, _error, _ that gives information on a log line why it failed to parse or meet some requirement of your query. We've talked about whether we should continue that line and include something like count, or I actually don't know what to name it. That's probably the hard part here. Or if this should be kept outside of the result and something that would be extended in the API to return additional metadata. We already have to extend the API to add some metadata to disambiguate the labels that were indexed at ingestion versus labels that were extracted at query time, so that Grafana or any UI could make better assumptions or better choices around the aids that exist for sort of visually adding to queries, like the plus and minus buttons and things don't work very well right now with logqlv2 because Grafana has no way to disambiguate which labels were actually indexed and where to put them. So I'm not sure yet. I think I like the _, which I think Owen and I were a little bit trying to sort that out still. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen, and is it is it useful to show the thing while I'm talking about it? I know Danny still is, but maybe I will share it.
Cool. No, it's cool. I'm done, I think.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments on those new design docs? Right. I am sharing now, and it's probably a weird aspect ratio. I mentioned this only just because I sort of mentioned earlier that, or Owen mentioned too, the out of order stuff might not happen in the immediate future. We really want it to. Try our best. It is probably, the most requested or common problem. The out of order stuff. The workarounds that we have now are put PromTail in the middle and re-timestamp the messages. This is not ideal. So we'd like to see that improved for sure.
Is the out of order stuff something we could jump in with some experiments or stuff like that? So we are really having bad issues with that because of internal restrictions. We cannot have too many parallel streams because we would overload the internal object store. And we would, if our resources are fine, so we are also limited in time. But if we have some time, we might jump in with some experiments and just try to get something running. So we've got plenty of CPU, which we can spare, but yeah, we're limited in streams. So this would really help us.
So I would say, let me see if I can find. Historically, we kind of went down this path with something called Lambda PromTail, which we did for a trial. I'll see. I'll put a link in the call under out of order. Inspired by. So I'd say take a look at that and see if something like that could fit your use case. If you're interested in making changes to Loki, I'd say probably take a look at the out of order design doc and to familiarize yourself with some of the internal concepts and kind of what you would need to account for. But the former is kind of like how can you work around the ordering constraint, right? To ensure things are in order, and then the latter is kind of how we plan to change Loki to be able to support these things natively.
Yeah, the Lambda PromTail stuff, it works. It's a little ugly to rewrite the timestamp, right? But the PromTail can expose the same push API that Loki does, and you could basically send many streams to it and use the pipeline tools to remove labels and then rewrite the timestamp so you can combine many streams into one and force ordering that way. It just means that the logs that end up in Loki are, the timestamp will differ by however much latency there was in that pipeline, or, based on when they're ingested. So oftentimes it's close enough, I suppose, but it's not a great solution.
So what we are doing right now is we are using FluentBit, and we added some Lua filter just recently, which rewrites the timestamp. This helps a lot, but of course messes up with the log order and everything. But I already looked into the code some time ago, and I don't think you would have to touch too many places just to try out and see how ordering might work out and sorting inside Loki.
Yeah, you're correct there. You basically just need to solve it in the ingesters.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some additional complexity to that.
Yeah, we already talked about in Slack.
Yeah.
I'm totally sure this is not as easy as it looks, but I think it's a solvable problem.
Yeah, I'd say definitely take a look at the out of order design doc then, because I tried to explain and address some of the nuances there. And yeah, I remember we talked a couple weeks ago about it.
Yeah, so maybe if there's some time, we will check the design doc and maybe do some experiments on how solutions might look like. But yeah.
The only other thing that I have on the list here is just mention a 2.1 release. We're just sort of waiting to be confident in the write-ahead log work that we've stabilized. It's been, I would say, at least one internal release cycle since we've made any changes to it. We're in the process of promoting it to all of our environments right now. And I think what we want is to have I don't know, another week or so of running it everywhere, a week or two. So that probably puts the 2.1 release out another, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks.
2.2.
2.2. Sorry. 2.2. The nice, well, the part that sucks to wait for is that we've made a ton of improvements to query performance, especially around, like, we've noticed people write some sort of non-optimal queries where they will have a line format and then wrap that in a metric query, and that line format operation doesn't do anything once you turn it into a metric, but we were consuming CPU to do the rewrite of the log line. So there's optimizations now that Cyril has found for not doing those kinds of things. Additionally, hints on queries for like the JSON operator, where we only need to parse out JSON keys and values that are actually used in the query somewhere. So if you have any kind of grouping operation on the query, then you really only need the keys that are included in the group. So that also improved. There's a bunch of performance improvement too. I want to figure out the right way to do this. I mentioned that we do internal releases. So there's images that we push. They're prefixed with the lowercase letter K. The catch is that, as we debug this stuff, we find problems. So I need a way to communicate to people what would be a stable version of that, but it would be a nice way to provide people that want something more quickly than what our published release cadence is, especially because we don't build binaries from those, but we do build Docker images. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe we just need to document it on the, in the docs and just regularly publish, after we've pushed something to prod and not had trouble with it for a week, or not, we're happy with it, that can be made available. Not sure if that's something people are interested in either, but
maybe we can get the feeling of the room. What if we just push literally those tags? Like, we just make those K tags public. We provide documentation about what those mean, and it's a choose your own adventure kind of thing, or choose your own experiment. What's the thinking on this call for the non-Grafana people? Would you like that, or would that be bad or not interesting?
I think we can.
yeah, case answer.
The jury is out.
I think you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, just go ahead. Like, just start talking. There's no.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry, don't know the guidelines here yet. So yeah, if you guys push those tags, we can help with testing on our side. We run CI every week. Maybe we can catch something and help you, report bugs and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, our Docker images fine, or should we be building the binaries?
No, Docker images are fine.
So it sounds like won't be very difficult for us to do. All of the images are already out there. Kind of a perk of working open source is we don't have to keep those private. We just have to add some documentation about when we cut them, and then probably also when we find bugs and that sort of thing to annotate them so people know.
Yeah, that's the catch, right? And previously, I would say that if you always were 1K release behind, so I think we just did K41, that it would be safe to use K40, but we have scrapped releases in the past for a number of reasons. So the tag existed, but we ended up never promoting it. And that's where I don't have a hard, fast set of rules that would say this is when it's okay to use one of those. So I think we would need to curate that list manually, which is hard for automation. And unless there's another thought we have on how we can sort of, cut a tag. We don't typically tag the repo for those releases. We just make a branch, but we could consider tags as a way to indicate.
So my point was that if you make it clear that there's no stability guarantee around those tags and just tag it in the Git repository and push the tag and be done with it, and just provide documentation that this is a sharp edge and you might be bleeding if you touch it.
Yeah, it's definitely, more stable than master, which is generally stable. Like our master is continuously deployed, and it's usually the case where we flesh out query bugs or performance bugs, but in general it should build and run. But yeah, zero breaks master. So. All right, I'll think about that. But this feels useful. I know there's a number of people that are. It's I don't know. Like I'm hesitant to sort of increase the cadence of releases. I don't want to burn people out on upgrades, but I also, for the people that want to stay current and want something more stable than master, we have that available. So it seems like nice to find a way to push that.
So, Simoa, but everyone else also feel free to speak up. But Simoa, for you specifically, as you were brave enough to speak up, and thank you for this. So if we just push the tag and be done with it, is this useful to you or is it not useful?
Yeah, it's useful. We can help with I can set up a pipeline on our side to help test that, run our CI with that tag, and hopefully report whatever bugs we can find. So yeah, we've been using master from time to time when a bug fix is released. So, but if we can help there, we'll gladly do it. So
excellent, thank you.
And we cut these about once a week. Every now and then we'll hotfix them, but they're pretty stable. It'd be like, I think we're in the 40s now, so the tag would be like K41 / some commit hash.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Maybe then is should we start, instead of hotfixing any K release, just update the new, just increase the counter instead of hotfixing something? Like if K41 has a problem, just push out K42 and be done with it, or is there more attached to that number on our end? I honestly don't know.
I'm not sure if there's a right answer around that. I find the number helpful personally because it kind of links to like which week I'm on, right? So I can deduce a sense of time from that. When I say we hotfix them, you would generate a new config hash, so you still have both versions of K41, for example. You'll just see that one kind of came after the other. We'll have another commit on top, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the hash changes, but the hash doesn't give you any sense of ordering. Is the annoying part of it, right? Like you can't tell you which was first.
Yeah, I think what we could do maybe is because usually we catch those bugs before pushing to prod. Like we catch those bugs in our own environment when we try it out, and that's when we recut and create a new tag. I think what we could do is, when we are confident enough, maybe on the next week, we could retag the K41 SHA to K41, right? Like we could promote one of them to be the K41, and the SHA will never be used by anyone outside of the company. So it's just 1 week behind, but I think it's good enough.
Good idea, sir.
So, and again, Simo, pipe up, but my gut is the more weight we add on our end, the less, like, and I jumped in this from half course. I tried to sit in the other call to see if anyone was still joining, but if our intention is to just have a lightweight way for other people to also use what we use and give feedback earlier, why not make it the simplest thing we can possibly make it, and not have blessed versions or any more process on our end? Just do the absolute bare minimum, which signals what we are doing, and let automation and numbering schemes and such do the rest. Because you're basically loading work on yourselves as of right now, and I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, so what happened this week, for instance, on K41 is I did a lot of performance optimization, and I had to recut, I think, K41 5 or 6 times because this has introduced a lot of regression in terms of features and it broke the API multiple times. So I wouldn't want anyone to use those tags that are not really ready for production.
So basically, the blessing step is when you push to production, and that is the one time you would be using that one tag.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
much operational burden for us to do what Cyril said, which is just make another Docker tag that links, say, K41 back to whatever we were happy with a hashed version on it. That's a single command we can run. We could embed it in the tool that we use for automating the release work anyway. So I think that's a pretty reasonable step. I like the idea then, because that does give a clear signal to people that, this is a stable and, we're happy with and using tag. And my hesitancy all along here is that there's no good way to communicate the state of the K tags, because like I said, K39 never existed. Like, we promoted it for a bit, and it wasn't because it was broken. I don't remember. It was, I think, because of timing, but we have had tags in the past that have been broken that it's hard to communicate that. Like, curating a doc doesn't sound like the right way, because who's going to read it, RSS feed.
I mean, we can also time box this discussion, but the way I understood what Simona said is that it doesn't matter. Like, he doesn't expect any stability guarantees or anything, at least not any hard ones, and that is what releases are there for. So you're kind of taking the usefulness of this kernel system away if you put too much effort and validation on our end.
No, yeah, but the problem, which is that we actually push images that have bugs, and we know that. So I don't want anyone to use them, because those people could technically give me a feedback or create an issue or waste time. I don't want to waste anyone's time, right? So, I don't want anyone to use those tags until I'm sure that they have no bug.
We can maybe reach a compromise there, and I'll only use the tags from yesterday. I won't ever use any tags you create today or something like that. I don't know. I was just trying to volunteer some help with triaging issues. Didn't expect this,
Yeah. No, it's not fully bug free, right? When we do the retype.
Of course. Yeah.
Because there's always a possibility that something slips in production for us. It's just that, during a day, we could catch 5 times a different bug and recut the hashes. And so I think, there's 5 hashes that no one wants to use, because we know they are faulty.
Maybe we should revisit this at the next call or something. It doesn't seem like we really have a consensus about this. I think that there's a couple ideas here that all have a lot of validity.
And Simona, you feel more than welcome to write down what you would like to get out of this, and everyone else as well. So that matches then.
I think that right now, if you want to test out our internal releases, they are the KXX branches in GitHub, and that's where we ultimately build our releases out of. Every now and then we'll choose a particularly successful one that has good timing. As for kind of promoting beyond that, we'll see. I find that we don't actually, I think Cyril cut those or hotfix them that often. I think I do it every now and then, but it would seem probably 1 or 2 standard deviations out, hotfixing it 4 or 5 times, just to kind of relay the expectations. Now that I have effectively made sure I had the last word here, Should we talk about the wall a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so one of the big pieces of our next release will be the write-ahead log. Notably, if you're running Kubernetes, which is kind of the environment that we target, Loki isn't built to only run there, but a lot of our examples do. This includes migrating from deployments to stateful sets, which kind of tack on a lot more operational burden, unfortunately. But the advantage there is that we get a write-ahead log, so it'll give us some additional persistence guarantees, which complements the replication factor that we already have in Loki. Some kind of distinctions that we have from, I guess, like philosophical distinctions from some other write-ahead logs are we really wanted to make it as easy as possible to operate Loki. So if the write-ahead log runs into errors, for instance, right? If you see file corruption, we will kind of still recover all the data that we can instead of kind of halting the recovery process entirely and requiring manual intervention. And that kind of came about because we realized that was our remediation path anyways. So in the unlikely event that you do kind of run into file corruptions, we'll just continue along and you won't actually need any operator intervention. The other one is we added a back pressure capability into the Loki ingester so that if you have a particularly large write-ahead log, you shouldn't be bounded by the available memory. So it'll load, what data it can up into a certain configurable memory bound, and then it'll flush that to storage, and then it'll kind of replay that until you get to the point where the write-ahead log is completed. And we kind of discovered that after an internal outage that we had where we ended up accruing very large walls, which ultimately couldn't be replayed without rescheduling everything onto much larger machines. And we realized that that's not a particularly attractive resolution path for many people. Certainly wasn't for us. But I think our next release, the 2.2 release, should have that. And as Ed said earlier, we're in the process of rolling that out to all of our environments right now. Did I miss anything there, Ed?
No, sounds good to me. We're kind of trying to optimize the write-ahead log to be as sane as possible for operations. We're always trying to avoid cascading failures or situations where you have maybe multiple things replaying walls, and we don't want out-of-memory crashes and things. So I think we've reached a pretty good compromise there. And yeah, we've, as much as we've been beating it up, our results have been good. Good work, Owen and team. All I got on the agenda. So go back to bike shedding about internal releases, or I don't know if anybody else has got anything else you want to talk about. I don't want to single you out, Ivana, but I heard a little rumor that Loki might be getting pagination in the Grafana API.
Then you have better info than I have. So what are we planning for the next release or next releases is to add backend for Loki, so you could do alerting on it. But I haven't heard about pagination, so I will have to check.
Yeah, that I'm not sure either. The paging story for Loki is a really funny one to me. Go ahead.
Wait. I know what you're meaning now. So we are investing time to figure out what would be the best way to request more logs. So if you hit your limit, how to do that. But I think we are not set in stone for the pagination, but Jess from the UX team is working on the best way how to do it. So yeah, you're right. We are working on that.
That story is funny to me because that limit has existed for all of time in Loki, right? Like you get 1,000 logs or 2,000, whatever you set the limit to, and we've been using it every day for a couple of years now, and I've just relearned, I guess, how I do querying, right? So I approach querying by just removing log lines that I don't care about, and I think there's some sort of question for me is whether I would even use a paging feature now if it existed. There are a handful of cases where that is true. Like I know if I'm just totally blind looking at a log stream that I don't know, you know, like this happens when I look at node logs that I'm just not sure. I'm just looking for something that I don't know what it is. You know, and in that case, paging is nice. Sometimes if I'm doing, you know, a look at, I don't know, like we recently added a log line to do the push size statistics of push requests into Loki. And so I was looking to like kind of page through a bunch of those just to see what they were. But it does also fall into that category of probably one of the things people give us the most feedback on, which is how do I go to the next page, right? So I think we have to have it, but I would also encourage everyone to just get really good at adding filter expressions to remove lines that they don't need, and you can work around this pretty well too. And I know that the alerting one is often, I'd forgotten about that. That's
so you can,
go ahead.
yeah, you can currently hack it with having Loki as a Prometheus data source, but Loki definitely deserves a backend and proper way how you can set up alerts in the Grafana.
Nice.
Are those the Grafana based alerts, like next to the dashboards?
Yeah.
That's all I have. I would open the floor to anybody that, even if it's not Loki related, we can anything.
What besides out of order is causing you pain right now? I think that's
we have an issue for that. We could go look at that.
Yeah. I haven't checked that yet.
I'm pretty sure the most requested thing was better documentation on running Loki in a highly available fashion. People really like the RPM thing. Bummer.
There's also, we should probably spotlight Reinhardt's work on the Loki distributed hub chart.
Yeah.
I try to mention that as many times as I can.
Yeah, so if not seen that before, I don't. Well, the script that he made is not in here, but there is a Loki distributed Helm chart. Internally at Grafana, we don't use Helm, so we don't get a lot of runtime on this stuff. Actually, I think I'm going to use Helm on my Kubernetes cluster on Raspberry Pis just to give myself some more familiarity with that experience. But this exists, but I don't. Hurts. GitHub handle. I'm curious to be looking at my search history.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it for you.
Yeah, so guide documentation 25. Popular. A UI in Loki. Yeah, I can see. I mean, related to this, one thing we don't do a very good job of is the dashboards that we use to operate Loki. They exist. They're in our JSON in the GitHub repo, but they're too heavily opinionated for our infra. For example, the gateway they reference isn't something that we open source, mostly because it's just handling our internal auth. It's not very complicated, but it does add the latency for those dashboards. I know actually Reinhardt adapted that as well as the Canaries dashboard inside of his demo, which is nice. But
I linked you the demo. I can put in the call.
Thank you. Yeah, this is. Okay. Oh, you just did. Check this out. I would say one thing to be aware of is running Loki in a distributed fashion on your local computer is probably going to perform worse than the single binary would. So, if you don't have an environment to run this on multiple computers, it will work, right? I've set it up and run it myself, and it's fine. But for the local scenario, that single binary is going to work better in most cases. So if you don't have an environment with multiple machines, be aware of that. But no, this is nice. Very excited about improving the HA Helm chart has been a request for a long time. Turns out not everybody loves JSON as much as we do. Here. Oh, here you go, Grafana. This one was going to be fixed.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this has got quite a bit of feedback on it. That, yeah, data retention policies. So based on labels, someone else came up with well, labels and time. Size is an interesting one, but we will be adding better retention policies. This is interesting. Enrichment. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, there's the backend migration one about moving from different storage classes, like S3 to AWS Glacier, that kind of example, which will probably come after our
Yeah,
stream deletion and retention work.
I don't know if AWS can handle that transparently for you or not. Like, you can still use the same bucket and access the same bucket, but have it do, or if it has to move them in a way that we need to add code to support that. Out of order, yet we will fix that. I think we have this already. It's not obvious because they're Cortex metrics and they're different for every storage type. Batch importing data. Windows event log support, that exists now. Thank you, Cyril. If anybody has Windows machines out there that they want to play around with, it's only in master now, it's not released, but
Yeah.
All right, I feel like I'm just kind of talking now. So.
Yes. Trying to give you the hint.
All right, I'm gonna end this then, unless anybody has any last comments or thoughts. Thanks for joining, everybody. Love seeing people from the community here. Tell your friends that also a month from now it's going to be much later in the day, so that it's more accommodating to a few more time zones. So if you did the thing where you had a calendar invite, I don't know if Richie already updated this to be correct. It looks like it is now.
Both the document and the link and the calendar are all updated.
Thank you, Richie.
Thank you, Richie. So we'll see everybody in a month. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.